Hey guys, it's Jeremy with Dragon's Breath Glassworks. We've got something special today. We are doing a goblet for the Secret Goblet Society challenge. So that's what we're going to be making today. The three challenge factors I picked, it's going to be fully hot assembled, it's going to be sculpted, and it's going to have a moving part. So watch and enjoy. So I've already got one coat of color on here. I'm using black. This is the R54SP. I really like this color black. It's really dense. You don't need a lot of it to go a long way. If you don't case it, it does silver up. At least in my furnace it does. So, you know, I always case this. I'm making a goblet here that I'm going to combine techniques I've done numerous times, but in different ways. So, I had a little issue here with my starter bubble, but I've quickly marvered and fixed that. Doing my second gather now, I say this a lot, but I always love the way that glass looks coming out of the furnace. It's just got such a nice glow, letting some of the excess drip off into the furnace. I don't want this to be particularly thick, so I'm only getting what I need. While I usually use paper on this particular one, I'm using a block. I do like these German blocks, the round shape. I prefer these over the Swedish blocks. They're just what I've always used and what I prefer to use. Taking a reheat, puffing this out a little bit. And here's a technique I haven't done in a while. We're going to crackle the surface of this. I do this a couple times, and I do long, slow crackles. I want real deep crackles. I'm careful not to over crackle, and I always immediately blow out the piece after I have crackled. That's going to spread those cracks out a bit and make them even deeper. So after a good heat, I'll go ahead and block this back in shape. When you blow out after a crackle, you very rarely get an even stretch, and so I like to give it just a quick block. Cut in a bit of a jack line and puff this out. Now I don't realize it at the time, but this jack line is overly thin. It's going to come back and cause me some frustration, and I deal with it in an part that I edit out, and I'll explain what I do once it happens, but it was something that was quite a bit frustrating. So here you can see a piece hanging up in the back. I'm starting the fingers. And while I do these one at a time, I cut them and I lay them on one at a time. The way I've got this edited, it doesn't look like that way. I'm just showing each finger being shaped, and then I show each finger being applied. But they are being put on one by one. In fact, you can see in the goblet in the background there, you see I have one little bit of glass hanging down. That's one of the fingers. So here we are, getting the third one ready. My shears get a little stuck there, but it's a quick recovery. It's easy enough. You know, making these by myself is really stressful and constantly moving as fast as I can from place to place, flashing and applying these bits. This piece took almost an hour from start to finish. I'm editing quite a bit of it out. It's mostly just reheats that I edit out, and that one little bit where I'm fighting with the jack line. So here we see these laying on. Some of them cut easier than the others. Again, it just depends on how difficult it's being. This one cuts much nicer than that first one. And laying them on one at a time. Notice one thing I'm doing differently here, though, is I'm not touching back on that final joint. I'm leaving them all up. And the reason I'm doing that is I'm not entirely sure which one of these is going to be the ring finger just yet. Once I've made that decision, I go ahead and lay the other ones down and only leave the ring finger exposed. But at the time when I start laying them, it all depends on how they shape and how they're attaching, which one I want to be the one to be the ring finger on the hand. And that's an important distinction for me, because we're going to put a ring on this hand, and to meet the kinetic part of this challenge, where we have a moving part, that ring is actually a loose fit. And the idea is that this is a skeletal hand, The ring doesn't have that flesh and muscle and tendons and whatnot to hold on to, and so it's just loose around the finger. So you can see the ring, the finger we decided to be the ring finger there. I wish I had a bench torch here, or an actual torch here. I use a Nortel miner a lot on some of my little small sculpted pieces, but here I just have a map gas. It does the job, but it's definitely slower than I would like, and that's where I make the mistake as far as my jackline goes. I don't realize it right now, but it becomes a problem in a little bit. So I've torched the end of that finger. I'm going to stretch it to thin it out a bit, and then just nip off the tip. And I'm thinning it because I need access to a smaller part. Now, I've got the piece hanging up. I've taken a good deep flash. I'm going to stretch this bit of glass. It's actually iris gold that we're using here. I'm going to wrap it around. That's just a piece of copper pipe. That's my blowpipe for making yard art. So I've got the piece hanging. I've moved that ring that I made over to that hot plate right in front of the furnace door. You might be able to see it there. I took a deep flash in between the show here. But, so I've heated up my tweezers, I've grabbed that ring and slid it on that finger, and we're going to take a quick flash. Alright, just making sure it's stuck a little bit. We're just loosening it up, make sure it's moving. I'm going to do that constantly throughout this process. You know, if it gets just sort of stuck and I can pop it free, it's not a big deal. But if it gets really fused on there and I'm not paying attention to it, then there goes the kinetic element of this piece. Torching the back half of that finger, this is the spot where I was the most afraid that ring was going to get permanently fused, because I need to fold that finger down the rest of the way, but I don't want it to touch the ring. So I'm moving the ring as far away from that joint as I can, bending it down and fusing that together and kind of wiggling that free to make sure it's staying loose. And all this play, I'm cooling off that joint before I go take a flash. All this cooling is putting a lot of stress on that moil and that thinner jackline. Dropping a hot blob to the back of the hand, kind of binding that all together, all those fingers getting bound together. This will be effectively the wrist area of the goblet. And we're going to clean and shape this up, just adding some little movement to that wrist, so it's not so just static and flat. I want it to be a little more interesting looking than that. You know, as I said, I'm always double checking that ring. Almost on every single flash that I take, I check to make sure it's still loose. I'm preparing where the stem is going to attach. And here goes the stem. I always put these in a triangular shape. I don't want like a perfectly round cylindrical bit. Drop my tools there. If you have a perfect cylinder, it just doesn't look quite like a bone. I mean, this doesn't really either, but it looks more angular than, you know, a cylinder would be, and it adopts the movement well. You see that ring's moving nicely there. It's shifting around. Now here I'm adding a vine running up the piece, and I didn't fully melt in the frit because I want texture. Kind of wrapping it around like it's almost like a plant's vine growing up and around this arm that's holding this cup. Now, right there, you see that bit of glass on the moil, how much everything's moving around? This is where I had the problem. After I put that vine on, that moil started to crack, and the crack ran down into the jack line, and I was afraid it was going to run down into the cup. And so I grabbed a hot bit of glass, and I did a moil wrap, and it's really moving around. I didn't realize how thin that jack line was at the time, so it was causing me some problems. Now that everything's stabilized, I've got some green glass here, and I'm going to take that and we're just going to apply a little bit right to the connection where the vine touches at the bottom of the goblet, right where the foot is going to be. And, you know, we use our leaf print and make a leaf. Here comes the foot. These always look neat on camera. I like the way they end up pulling out. Obviously, the spin mold is not designed for squishing feet flat. But I find it works really well, and it's a good alternative for me since I don't have someone to paddle while I use the jacks, and I have never been great at using a footing tool without leaving a little lump on the piece. So, you know, it works for me. It keeps it round, it keeps it flat without being too thick. Me taking some time, straightening that up, flattening that up out a bit. Weird effect from the fisheye lens from the GoPro is that foot looks so much bigger than the cup right now, but it's really not. It's just, I don't know, maybe it's the fisheye lens. And you'll see in the final shot of the whole piece how it fits together fine. Making sure it's nice and flat, everything's still moving. I'm cooling that foot down. I would never have done this years ago. You know, I'm moving much faster now, and so the movement of that foot is an issue. I want it to be stable. Before I putty it, I almost forgot about this step. Before I putty it, I'm going to go ahead and add a couple more leaves. I'll add 2 at a time. The bit's hot enough that I can quickly do 2 at a time, take a deep flash, and crimp both those leaves one after the other. Had I thought about it, I would have done all this before I added the foot. But I had not planned this out as carefully as I should have, and I think this flower that I'm adding, this little rosette, was very much a last-second addition to the piece. So it's real simple, just a twist in the center and then 3 little petals. Sometimes I go a little more elaborate on those and I add another 3 petals behind them, but for this particular one, I was already pushing my luck with that moil, so I figured let's just get this off of there, go ahead and punny it up. One trick on these clawed goblets is because that stem is so bent and twisted, is keeping everything on center, but on this particular one it came out nice. Little tap and it pops right off. You can see it actually broke below the thin spot that was giving me trouble, and so it's kind of thick up there. And in my attempt to just reheat and make sure the crack didn't run and there was nothing going on, I fused that ring in. But I was able to pop it free, and ended up having to do so though with the straight shears. I actually forgot about this. I thought I got it with the tweezers, but I ended up having to go in, and there was one little spot up underneath the finger that I had to use the blades of the shears to get in there. Got it good and hot, tweezing it out. I'm being careful not to overheat the crackle though. I want it to stay nice and deep, even around the lip. Trimming off that lip, flattening it out a bit after good heat, and this I believe opens up nice and wide in one go. I don't think I even need a reheat on this, which is good because I was getting really tired by the end of this. We're pushing an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes at this point. Here when we knock it off, my camera died right as I went to knock it off. So I think that we get one quick shot of it and then it's dead. This piece took longer than I thought it was going to make, and it became an issue. So all right, there's the finished piece. Let me tell you, this was stressful. It took about an hour from start to finish. We did the crackle cup, the claw hand, we did a vine growing up around it with leaves and a flower, and for me, one of the coolest parts is the ring is on there, but it is loose, and keeping that from fusing the whole time, that was tricky. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed that. This is our submission for the Secret Goblet Society challenge, and thanks a lot. If you did like that, please like and subscribe, and there will be more videos up in the corner for you to watch. See you next time.